Hidden in the azure vastness of the East China Sea is a chain of tiny islands whose diminutive size conceals a massive impact on world history. In the west, the subtropical climes of the Ryukyu Isles are known primarily as the birthplace of karate and the site of the bloodiest battle ever fought between the United States of America and the Empire of Japan. Today, this archipelago is fully integrated into the modern Japanese nation-state. Yet the natives of Ryukyu are a unique indigenous population who stand apart from mainstream Japanese society with their own languages, traditions, and historically one of the most dynamic maritime trade empires in Asian history. In this video, we will explore the storied past of these remarkable ocean-going peoples, focusing on the Ryukyu Kingdom and its golden age at the crossroads of maritime Asia. That trade carries on even today, and we have delicious proof of this coming from our sponsor Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. Unique monthly snack boxes shipped from Japan, packed with items rarely available to the rest of the world. This month's Tokyo Treat box is Okinawa seaside snacking, featuring the summer specialities of Okinawa Island. That means Okinawa potato chinzuko, chilled hiyashi ramen, kamisen senbei, and loads more. There's a similar selection of modern Japanese specialities available in your Tokyo Treat box every month, featuring special items only available seasonally or only available in Japan, including limited runs of familiar items like Sakura Pepsi or Sake Kit Kats. But if you want something more traditional, there's also Sakura Co., who focus on artisan snacks and teas with a long history in Japan. This month you'll get the Heritage of Nikko box, which features snacks from the long history of UNESCO World Heritage Site Nikko City, such as Hinohikari Senbei and Nikko Rusk that pairs perfectly with 88th Night Shinchad tea. Sakura Co boxes also come with a delightful piece of tableware. This month, you get a traditional wrapping cloth, the patchwork furoshiki, used for decorating or storing other items, or even yourself. And both boxes come with booklets that explain the culture surrounding each item you get and other facets of the monthly theme. So you can learn a few things as you enjoy your curated snacking experience. To get either or both of these monthly boxes delivered straight to your door, use our link in the description to set up your Tokyo Treat or Sakura Co subscriptions, and then wait for the good stuff to come to you. The Ryukyu's islands form a thin cluster of small land masses stretching from Kyushu to Taiwan, with Okinawa being the largest and most populated in the chain. Today, the Ryukyus are part of Japan's Kagoshima and Okinawa prefectures. However, their native peoples are of different ethnic stock than the Yamato people of mainland Japan. At least 6 unique languages are spoken across the Ryukyu archipelago, such as Amami, Kunigani, Okinawan, Mikayo, Yaeyama, and Yonaguni, all mutually unintelligible with standard Japanese. For many centuries, the histories of Japan and the Ryukyus travelled down separate paths. Unlike the traditionally inward-facing shoguns of Japan, the kings of Ryukyu built their civilization on long-distance maritime trade, resulting in a vibrantly cosmopolitan society born from a heavy heaping of imperial Chinese grandeur, a coating of Japanese feudal grace, and a dash of spice from far-off lands like Malacca and Java. Inversely, the cultural contribution of the Ryukyus on the world stage is considerable, especially in the traditional martial arts. What do Ralph Macchio in The Karate Kid, Bruce Lee in Fists of Fury, and 3 out of 4 Ninja Turtles have in common? They all employ weaponry or combat forms originating on Okinawa. We will elaborate on that near the end of this video, but first, let us dial the clock back and start our march through Ryukyu's storied past from the very beginning. The origins of the Ryukyuan peoples are shrouded in the mists of prehistory. Their earliest ancestors likely shared much of their ancestry with the Jomon and Yayoi peoples of prehistoric Japan, and spoke the Proto-Japonic language. Over many centuries, this archaic tongue split down multiple evolutionary paths, with the speech of the southern islands eventually becoming unintelligible to the old Japanese that developed on the mainland. The climate of the Ryukyus is harsh, a land of dense jungles and rocky mountains regularly battered upon by vicious typhoons. Due to this unforgiving environment, the islands remained in the prehistoric Stone Age for far longer than the Japanese mainland. In the 7th century, when the Yamato people were forging a sophisticated agrarian empire, their distant cousins were still scattered across their native reefs in small hunter-gatherer communities. The early Japanese state was aware of their estranged insular relatives, who they called the Nanto, meaning Southern Island people. The Ryukyus also appear in the written records of ancient China. The annals of the Northern Wei dynasty described the distant islands to their east as a place where sorceresses and priestess queens used their magic powers to wield absolute authority over men. Unlike the deeply patriarchal culture of the Japanese mainland, Ryukyuan society has long featured women in positions of great power. Even in later centuries, after secular rulership became the domain of male royalty, women continued to be the island's main religious authorities. The Noro, a priesthood composed exclusively of women, held an extremely privileged place in Ryukyuan society for centuries, and still exists today. Between the 11th to 13th centuries CE, agriculture finally took hold on the islands. This precipitated the rise of a new hierarchy of local chieftains, known as Aji, who ruled from Gusuku, hilltop castles that kept a watchful eye over a handful of surrounding farming communities. Over 300 Gusuku were erected across the entire Ryukyu chain. That amounted to a lot of local strongmen stuffed together on tiny islands with not a lot of landmass to go around. It is no surprise then that constant warfare was the norm. By the early 14th century, the Aji of Okinawa Island had been consolidated into a trio of loose-knit tribal confederations, Nanzan, Chuzan, and Hokkuzan. Meanwhile, great advances in shipbuilding and navigation technology were slowly making long-distance merchant expeditions far more viable than they had been in previous centuries. This planted the seed for the Ryukyus to rouse from the long slumber of obscurity and burst onto the pages of history. In the solar system of the Far East, China had long been the sun around which surrounding nations orbited. In 1368 CE, Hongwu, the first emperor of the prosperous Ming dynasty, strengthened this Sinocentric world order by declaring that any nation that wished to trade had to become a tribute-paying vassal of the Middle Kingdom. From Korea to Vietnam to Java, over 50 kings across Asia played along with this theatrical display of servility for access to the riches of the Celestial Empire. In 1372, Sato, the king of Chuzan, sent a tribute legation to Great Ming, beginning an era of Chinese suzerainty over the Ryukyu Islands that would last for 500 years. As it happened, the Okinawans were in a perfect geographical position to benefit from subservient cooperation with China, for the Ming Empire was in need of an intermediary to springboard its sea-bound commercial missions to its tributaries located further across the sea. Thus, the Ryukyuans became key middlemen in an extremely lucrative trade network, connecting China with exotic locales like Champa, Khmer, Siam, and Java. Okinawa's propulsion into international relevance coincided with its unification. In 1416, Shohashi, the king of Chuzan, conquered Hokkuzan, and in 1429, Nanzan followed. To secure the legitimacy of these annexations, Hashi sought official recognition from the imperial court at Nanjing, which he promptly received. In the following decades, Shohashi and his successors took to the seas, conquering the many Gusuku of Yaeyama, Mikayo, Amami, and all the other inhabited islands of the archipelago. For the first time in history, the Ryukyu Islands were unified under the rule of one state, the Ryukyu Kingdom, a polity which would endure for over 400 years. In the halls of Shuri Castle, there once hung a magnificent bronze bell. Cast in 1458 during the reign of King Sho Taikyu, it features an inscription which reads as follows: "The land of Ryukyu is a lovely place in the South Seas, an admirer of Korea's excellence, cheek to jaw with China, close as lips and teeth with Japan. This legendary island evokes admiration in its neighbors. Traveling by ship, its peoples form a bridge between many countries, filling its temples with the most precious goods and exotic products of foreign lands." At the height of its power, the Ryukyu Kingdom was a Far Eastern parallel to the merchant Republic of Venice, barely visible on a map, yet a leviathan of mercantile dominance at sea. During the reign of the Shou dynasty, Shuri Castle, the royal seat of the kingdom, was transformed into a regal palace in the Chinese style, a visual testament to the Ryukyu kingdom's commitment to emulating the opulence of the Celestial Empire. Although the kingdom's aristocracy took the majority of its cultural cues from Ming China, they adopted much from their other longtime trading partners too. The monks of Japan and Korea led the way in popularizing the Buddhist faith in the archipelago, with the grand temples of Enkakuji serving as the legacy of their contribution to Ryukyu's religious tapestry. Meanwhile, a pair of dragon pillars found at the entrance of the royal castle and modelled after similar structures found in Cambodia and Thailand indicate the intimate impact that the vibrant cultures of Southeast Asia had on the Ryukyuan social fabric. The royal line of Ryukyu was full of many wild personalities. King Shotoku, for example, was a swashbuckling pirate king who spent his royal tenure as a seaborne corsair. He was known for being an early adopter of gunpowder weaponry imported from China, and for being a devotee of Hachiman, the Shinto god of war. During his reign, he took up the Mitsudomoe of Hachiman as his personal banner, a symbol which became the royal crest of the kingdom. However, the greatest king of Ryukyu is unanimously considered to be Shoshin, the third monarch of the second Shou dynasty. Before his reign, regional Aji still held considerable power, and the royal court often had to contend with uprisings launched by these agitated local warlords. Shin addressed this issue by coaxing the Aji to come live at the royal castle at Shuri, where he lavished them with material luxury and social prestige, then confiscated their weapons. This effectively declawed the tigers prowling the countryside by turning them into pampered house cats. In their place, the islands were now administered by a properly centralized royal government, helmed by a caste of scholar bureaucrats educated in Chinese political philosophies. Next on Shoshin's list of things to consolidate under state authority was religious life. For many centuries, the Noro priestesses had wielded massive influence over the rural peasantry. To bring these shamanesses into the fold, Shoshin established the institution of the Kikoe Ogimi, or High Priestess, to serve as a temporal leader of the Noro. The role of the Kikoe Ogimi was reserved for a woman of the royal family, anchoring the island's ancient matriarchal cult to the royal line. Shoshin's reign also presided over a golden age of literature and poetry in the indigenous Okinawan tongue, a testament to the fact that although the Ryukyu kingdom was a melting pot of cultural influence from all over Asia, its rulers never lost sight of their own indigenous faith, language, and customs. While the Ryukyuan kingdom was coasting through its golden age, the Empire of Japan had been in a state of political anarchy, but by 1603, the land of the rising sun had been permanently glued back together. When Shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu finished his unification of the Land of the Gods, events leading up to a Japanese invasion of the Ryukyu kingdom were well underway. Back in 1592, when Ieyasu's predecessor, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, had been planning a grand conquest of Korea and China, he demanded that the Ryukyuans send troops to bolster his invasion force. Not only had the reigning king, Shōnei, refused, but he also warned the Ming Emperor of Hideyoshi's invasion plans. Despite the fact that Ryukyu was a Chinese tributary, the rulers of Japan had always considered their estranged island cousins to be within their sphere of influence. Therefore, this defiance was a sting to samurai pride, and increased the shogunate's resolve to bring the defiant Nanto into the fold. The Japanese Bakufu also saw the Ryukyu Islands as potential backdoor access to the riches of the Middle Kingdom. When the Tokugawa regime came to power, they inherited a dismal relationship with Ming China. Throughout the 1400s and 1500s, Japan-based pirates had devastated the Chinese coastline, Japanese samurai had trashed a Chinese city over a trade dispute, and, a Japanese dictator had tried to invade China through Korea. All this had understandably compelled the imperial court at Nanjing to cut off formal relations with Japan, severely limiting Japanese access to Chinese goods. In contrast, Chinese relations with neighboring Ryukyu remained peachy keen. So, schemed the Tokugawa Bakufu, If Nippon could somehow seize control over the Ryukyu kingdom, without disrupting the island nation's status as a trading partner of the Chinese Empire, then the islands could essentially be used as a geopolitical money laundering scheme to illicitly funnel Chinese wealth onto Japanese shores. In the year 1609, Shogun Toyotomi Hidetada charged his vassals, the Shimazu clan of Satsuma Domain, with the task of subjugating the royal house of Sho. Being located on the southern tip of Kyushu Isle, the Shimazu had long been both a regular trading partner and a fierce political rival of the Okinawan domain, making them intimately familiar with their enemy. Moreover, the samurai levies of the Satsuma domain were a battle-hardened bunch, many of whom were veterans of Hideyoshi's invasion of Korea. Although the samurai of Satsuma encountered ardent resistance from Amami to Tokunoshima to Okinawa, the spears, bows, and Chinese-style firearms wielded by the Nanto were no match for the modern European-style muskets wielded by the ruthlessly disciplined invaders. In the end, it took only 2 months for the samurai to seize Shuri Castle and capture King Shonei. Thereafter, the Ryukyu kingdom was the possession of the daimyo of the Satsuma domain. As we recall, one of the main reasons that Edo had greenlit this invasion was to use the Ryukyus to sneak Chinese products into Japan. However, if the imperial court of Ming found out that their longtime tributary vassals of Ryukyu were now a Japanese possession, they would likely cut off trade with the islands. Thus, the Shimazu occupiers came up with a harebrained scheme to keep their conquest of the Ryukyu kingdom a secret from China. To that end, the Ryukyu kingdom was allowed to continue existing, and the Sho dynasty was allowed to continue ruling, albeit as a puppet attached to Satsuma's strings. Next, elaborate steps were taken to make sure that the Chinese would not find out who was really in charge. When Chinese traders arrived on Okinawan shores, anything that displayed a Japanese name, such as a book, was hidden. If a Satsuma man was spoken to in Japanese by a Chinese official, he had to pretend that he did not understand. Moreover, native Ryukyuans were forbidden from adopting Japanese names, clothes, or customs. This absurd arrangement had the effect of preserving Ryukyuan culture from Japanese assimilation. After all, since the Satsuma clan insisted on maintaining the illusion that the Ryukyu kingdom was definitely totally not a Japanese puppet state, it had a vested interest in making its people appear as non-Japanese as possible. According to folk legend, it is during this era where the origin of Okinawan martial arts lies. As a preventative measure against local uprisings, the Shimazu samurai confiscated all weapons from the native peasantry. The rural farmers of Okinawa, now defenseless, sought new ways to protect themselves. With humble ingenuity, they turned everyday farming equipment into improvised arms. Trowels, millstone handles, rice threshers, and tenbin sticks eventually became sai, tonfas, nunchaku, and bow staffs. The restriction on bearing arms also necessitated the adoption of unarmed combat, resulting in the development of karate. It should be noted that more recent historical analyses claim it was not the Okinawan peasantry, but the native aristocracy, also forbidden from publicly carrying weapons, who developed Okinawan karate and kobudo. Either way, the Karate Kid, Fists of Fury, and so many other classics of martial arts cinema owe many of their most iconic scenes to Ryukyuan defiance and creativity. By the 19th century, the world order of the Far East was changing. Having sailed into the East China Sea with massive gunboats and cratefuls of drugs, the Western world was the master of Asia now. Japan was at a crossroads. It could submit, just as China had after the Opium Wars, or it could adapt. Japan chose the latter, and underwent the single most successful national modernization project ever achieved. As the Meiji government abolished the country's feudal domains and placed them in the hands of the central government, they began to look upon the Ryukyu kingdom as nothing more than an antiquated relic which had to be brought into the modern age. This came to fruition in 1879, when the Ryukyu kingdom was dismantled, and its territories were fully incorporated into the Empire of Japan. The following decades were hard times for the Ryukyuan people, who were turned into second-class citizens in their own ancient homeland. Meaningful government positions on the islands were reserved for mainland Japanese, and native Ryukyuan culture and languages were suppressed. Non-Japanese influences on Ryukyuan society underwent forced erasure, while the native Noro priestesshood was forced to assimilate into a standardized form of the Shinto faith mandated by the imperial government. In state-sponsored schools, Ryukyuans were forced to speak only standard Japanese, and students caught using a native Ryukyuan language were forced to wear a dialect card around their neck as a form of public humiliation. The Imperial Japanese occupation of the Ryukyus came to a head in 1945, when a certain sleeping giant, filled with terrible resolve after an incident at Pearl Harbor, arrived upon their shores. During one of the bloodiest clashes of the Second World War, the Imperial Japanese Army forcefully conscripted thousands of native Ryukyuans and fed them into the meat grinder. During the battle, using the Okinawan language was considered to be an act of sedition, and anyone caught speaking it was labeled an American spy and summarily executed. The Battle of Okinawa was an apocalypse. Over half of the island's entire population perished, and countless priceless historical monuments from the Ryukyu Kingdom, including Shuri Castle, were completely destroyed. After the A-bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, many Japanese colonies, such as Korea and Taiwan, regained their independence, but the Ryukyus did not. The islands were administered by a United States civil administration until 1972, after which they were returned to Japan, to whom they belong to this day. Today, the lasting damage of over a century of forced assimilation has taken its toll on the Ryukyuan people, most of whom speak only standard Japanese rather than their indigenous tongues. However, despite their many tribulations, the modern peoples of Okinawa, Yaeyama, Mikayo, Amami, and all the other inhabited islands of this storied archipelago have held true to their unique cultural identities, thus in a fully democratized Japanese nation, slowly becoming more receptive to protecting the cultures of its indigenous peoples. There exists a future for the Ryukyuan people, where their songs are still sung, their customs still practiced, and the legacy of their kingdom, a mercantile juggernaut at the crossroads of Asia, is kept alive. More videos on the history of East Asia are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.